All right, it is 8:30 and I just want to make sure you all can hear me before we get started. Is that an all clear? Excellent. Well, welcome everybody and good morning. My name is Jennifer McFarland and I'm the AVP of Gift Planning and Stewardship at the Wisconsin Foundation and Alumni Association. And I currently also serve as Vice President for the Wisconsin Association of Charitable Gift Planners, also known as WACGP. We're a professional organization that serves legal and financial advisors, nonprofits and development professionals by offering programs such as this one today. And many of you here this morning are members, so thank you for that. I also want to give special thanks to the Madison Community Foundation for managing the virtual meeting platform this morning. So on behalf of the board, we're pleased to share today's program about working with women on estate and charitable planning. And in my own experience working with donors, I can recall many gift conversations over the years where the donor expressed concern about outliving her resources, also concerns about the impact of her charitable gifts on family members, or hesitancy in sharing the details of future gifts with our organization. And in all of these situations that I can recall, the donors were women. And so to dig deeper into this topic today, we'll be hearing from two professionals from our Madison area community. First, I'd like to introduce Noelle Augelli, who is an associate attorney with Wilson Law Group. Noelle is a member of the Wisconsin Council of Estate Planning Attorneys, Wealth Council, Elder Council, and will also be joining the board of the Wisconsin Association of Charitable Gift Planners in early 2021. I'd also like to welcome Cherie Gon, who is a financial advisor with Edward Jones. And Cherie is an active member of the Middleton Chamber of Commerce, the Wisconsin LGBT Chamber of Commerce, and the Westtown Middleton Rotary Club, to name a few. And also both Noelle and Cherie received their law degrees from UW-Madison. So if you have questions along the way, please add them to the chat. I'll let the presenter know when there's a question, and we'll also leave time at the end for Q&A, and we're planning to wrap up at 9:30. So now I'll turn it over to Noelle.
Noelle, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for the introduction and for the heads up, Cherie. First, we're here to talk about why we give. There's many reasons why people in general, and especially women, are inclined to give to certain charities. Maybe it's their personal values, their faith, sense of morality, or that desire to create some sort of a positive legacy in their wake. We all know that there are so many benefits of giving, not only just the satisfaction and the joy of giving, but also there's several different financial benefits for giving, such as income tax deduction, elimination of capital gains, or removal of property from a taxable estate. To break down some statistics, which we're going to send you the links to the articles in the follow-up, but about 53.1% of Americans give to charity on an annual basis. But only about 5% of Americans have some sort of planned gifting strategy. Breaking that down even further, 32% of Americans have some sort of will, and of those Americans, only about 14 have some sort of charitable component in that. Breaking things down even further, we see that women on average are giving more than men. According to a MarketWatch report in 2019, for high net worth or professional women, on average give, or 93% are giving to charity, whether through annual gifting or through requests, compared to only 87%, still quite a bit, of the same net worth male components. Even when it comes to giving of time, women are 56% more likely than men's 41%. But seeing how women are so overwhelmingly willing to give, why is it only that 5% of Americans as a whole have some sort of gifting strategy. The main reason, I believe, is that we are not well educated in our society on your options. First and foremost, you don't just have to give the cash that's in your pocket. It could be cash, securities, real estate, personal property, life insurance, retirement plans, so many different ways that you can give. But I'm going to be focusing on the gifting through estate planning. First, one of the greatest benefits of giving through estate planning is it's testamentary, meaning you're not going to be using those assets during your lifetime. It's what is left over. So that big concern of, will I outlive my funds and then I can't give to charity today during my lifetime? Instead, you're giving of the residue of your life through wills or trusts. First, and that's the most common that you hear about potentially, is the bequest. In your trust or your will, you can give directly to the charity of your choice, and that reduces your taxable estate dollar for dollar. Now today, keep in mind that you can give a little over $11 million before you're hit with a taxable estate, but that number adjusts depending on who's in Congress. So there's, in our lifetime, I'd say the lowest was 600,000 in the late 90s. There's talk about maybe it lowering down to 3 million. We're not sure where that's going to land, and we're not sure where that's going to land upon your passing. So that's something to keep in mind, something to keep updated with your financial advisor and your estate planning attorney on if that's a big concern for you, of lowering that tax burden on your family while also contributing to a great cause. You can give any, all, or just part the taxable amount. Another area I want to focus on is different types of charitable trusts. So first and foremost, I'll break things down just a little bit. A will is what most people hear about when it comes to estate planning. And that is actually instructions for a judge to go through a process called probate that sorts out the assets that you had during your lifetime, your family members, and your wishes. There's different ways to limit what goes through that process through different coordination of your financial assets, and I won't go into that too much at this point, and just focus on the probate issue. Those assets that go through probate, even if you have a percentage going to charity, there are several costs involved. Maybe you hire an attorney to walk you through that process. There's different probate fees. A certain percentage is going to be taken by the judge, essentially, to make things easier. So that even if you have a great amount that's going to be going through probate, that is going to go to charity, that's going to lower your dollar for dollar, there's still costs involved that may limit things. So that is one of the many reasons, just talking from a charitable point of view, why you might want to look at trusts. Trust is a private document. It's your instructions to your family or to your advisors on how you want things to go. It doesn't go through that lengthy process, and there's really not going to be the same sorts of fees involved. But where I want to focus on is there, in addition to just writing a percentage or a dollar amount of your estate into that trust that goes to a charity, like a bequest, there's a couple different types of trusts that focus on charities as a whole. One is the Charitable Remainder Trust. So maybe married couples, I see this sometimes, where they want to make sure that your spouse is well taken care of once you pass away. So the spouse is going to be receiving income off of the investments that are left behind. So they can live off of the income, but once that spouse passes away, everything else, all that principal that has been tucked away into this charitable trust, all gets donated at the second passing. You can do it quite the opposite as well, that during your, if you had a trust and you passed away, you wanted to care for your spouse with the principal. And any income that's generated from that principal goes towards a charity. And that's called a charitable lead trust, because we start with all the income going over to the charity or up to a certain point. Maybe it's that taxable amount where it's given to charity right away through the trust, while the rest goes through the spouse, lowering that dollar for dollar again. Another option that I've seen with clients is the retained life interest in property, or like a life estate. So it's possible to give your land, your property, to a charity, but not necessarily give up the rights to live there. So you can make the donation today through this life estate and continue to live there, but at the remainder of, or once you pass away, everything automatically goes over to charity, and all of these things take place outside of the probate system. So there's lots of different options there. I know I shout out quite a few. I'm not sure if there's any questions, or Cherie, if you want to jump in on the financial side that all these things can work out.
Oh, Cherie, you're muted.
Oh, I'm muted. Do you want me to start talking about the investment side, or do you have more to go on? Because I don't have any questions for you right now, personally.
Okay, sounds good. I thought there'd be a good spot for a check-in for questions. I'm not seeing any in the chat.
Not any at this time, but just a reminder that it's fine to ask questions along the way, or save them till the end for the Q&A is fine too.
You can go ahead, Cherie.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for having me. I think that it's really important. This is such a valuable conversation to be having. And I think one of the most overriding things is communication. I really try to ask my clients what their goals are early. I ask them if they have charitable inclinations. Do they want to leave a legacy? And females definitely have different values about money than men do. And I see this in marriages. I see this after divorces. I see this as when I'm dealing with widows. And sometimes it takes females a little bit longer to come to terms with what those values look like with money. And it's really important that we're having this conversation because, and I was having trouble finding the statistics, but I know that in the next decade, females will be inheriting trillions with a T in assets and money. In addition, women are in the workforce, they're making more money. So we really need to be focusing on females when we're looking at philanthropy. You don't know what you don't know. You know, Noelle alluded to education. It's really important to be educating not just female donors, but any individuals that want to have some sort of a legacy or are charitably inclined, no matter how small or large that inclination may be. I'm going to go over a variety of different strategies. And I think what's really important to remember is that, you know, these are not just strategies that are always going to work. You know, sometimes these things might work this year, but they're not going to work 5 years from now, or it seems like a good idea and then people's circumstances change. You know, I always tell my clients, your life is not a straight line. And 2020 has proven that to all of us, I think. So we have to constantly be in communication with our clients. Where are they at? Has something changed? We have to be communicating with, you know, legal and tax laws. You know, as a financial advisor, I almost feel like I'm the quarterback sometimes. Like I'm the go-between between the estate planning attorneys and the CPAs and making sure everyone's on the same page. Typically, I'm talking to an individual more times throughout the year than they're talking to their estate planning attorney or their CPA, depending on what's going on with them that particular year. You know, Jennifer mentioned that I do have a law degree. I practiced law for 10 years, and I'm super glad that Noelle is the one presenting about all of this. And I know enough to be dangerous, but I know enough when I need to have my clients talk to their attorney. And I think that having that team in place for our clients is really, really important. And I think that, you know, just some of these strategies, there's a lot of different backgrounds on this call. It all is going to boil down to communications. If you're a nonprofit and you're trying to work with people, you have to be constant, and just any professions, we have to be constantly repeating these options, because sometimes when people are maybe 55, that idea doesn't resonate, but when they're 75, it sounds like a super good idea. But letting them know that these things are coming, or are different options throughout their life, are important, because, you know, as a caveat, the things I'm going to go over again, they're not going to work for everybody. They're not going to work every year. So you have to really be nimble and be willing to make changes as things happen. And that all is going to come down to communication. And I really like to start with goals. I'm a very goals-based advisor. And, you know, what do you want your money to do? What does this mean to you? And I think women really appreciate having those conversations, because sometimes people don't ask them, and they don't, no one's asking them like, well, how do you feel about this? And what does it mean to you to give to this organization? And I think it's worth it to have those conversations to really draw out the importance of this. And then that's something that we can continue to use as a talking point going forward. So a lot of this is really going to go down to that communication and education. Women also have concerns about outliving their money. And that is something that I hear over and over again. Women typically have a longer life expectancy. Jennifer is not wrong when she says she hears this. This is incredibly important to people. Medical costs are soaring. People are living longer, and they are very concerned about whether or not they're going to be able to afford nursing home care, home health, you know, just any of those expenses with inflation. It's a really big concern for people. And so you know, if they can save money on taxes so they have more money in their pocket and they have more money to give, that's a wonderful thing. So I'm going to sort of talk about a couple of different avenues. So there's going to be some giving that they can do during their lifetime. And then we're going to talk about some just strategies that they should be thinking about while they're living for after they have passed. So the first thing that I want to talk about is just transferring actual assets. So an example of an asset that could be transferred is just shares of stock. So who would be a good candidate to be looking at when you're thinking about this as an option? So a suitable person would probably be someone who's a high net worth investor. They currently are making annual charitable contributions or considering making charitable contributions, or maybe it's a client that has a large concentration of a highly appreciated stock. We all have some of those clients that they just really love this stock, or they worked at a company. It's not particularly diversified. If this stock has substantially increased in value and they want to make annual contributions, they could consider donating that stock instead of cash. But again, you have to let them know that that's an option. So then what happens is that the nonprofit is going to get that stepped up cost basis, and the client's not going to have to pay the taxes on that.
Excuse me, Cherie.
Yes.
There is a question about when you talk about clients with high net worth, what is your definition of high net worth in your world?
That's a good question. I think it's going to sort of depend, but I would say high net worth are people that probably are not using a lot of their investable assets to live on. And so I would say you're probably talking, you know, they're going to have at least, you know, probably over $1 million in invested assets, maybe sometimes less, just depending on what their situation is. I mean, there's a lot of people that maybe have less than that, but because they have, you know, pensions and Social Security, and they're literally not touching any of their investments. And so they just continue to grow. And I think high net worth is going to continue to change as, you know, just economic forces change as well. So this is important to be working with a CPA on these kind of things, because generally you can, you know, deduct the fair market value of the securities, but you really need, there are limitations on that. And so you really want, that's where, you know, you don't want to just say, okay, I'm not just going to say this is what you can deduct. We're going to rope the CPA in on this conversation. I am not going to be giving tax advice. Again, I know enough to be dangerous, and I know enough that I should be roping the CPA in on this. There's different times when it could also be good to donate those securities. So example, if there's like a takeover that's going to be at a company that you have, you know, highly appreciated securities where you're going to have to sell those because of this takeover, and you don't want to incur those capital gains, that's a great time to donate those to a charitable organization, because they're not going to have as high of capital gains because they're getting that stepped up cost basis when you're passing that on. So if an individual is in a position to upgrade their portfolio, maybe they can be donating, say, a lower dividend producing stock to a charity, and so then they can purchase stocks that pay higher dividends. When you talk about, wanting to not outlive your money, if people are, living off of dividends, the higher dividends are going to be a better, they're going to make women feel more secure if you have this kind of steady higher income coming in versus a stock that doesn't pay a dividend or has something that's, kind of pennies on the dollar. Another thing is that if you want to increase your total cost basis in a stock that you intend to hold, so you could be giving some of those low cost basis securities to charity and hanging on some of that higher cost basis. So if you do sell it, you're not going to incur as many capital gains taxes. And again, these are things that you have to strategize about, and they're not just going to work all the time, but you have to be, working with that and working with your CPA really closely on those kind of things. And obviously you want to be checking with the charity to make sure that they want to receive stocks. I don't know of any charity that wouldn't want to, but some may not feel comfortable with that. So just obviously making sure that your gift will be well received is important as well. Amen.
Cherie,
yes.
I'm actually going to jump in here with another question. It's timely. There's a question about how an organization should accept stock if they've never done that before.
Well, so I work with a few nonprofits. Usually what we would do is we would just open a brokerage account for that stock, and the nonprofit would be the owner of the brokerage account. This is a taxable account. Think of it like a savings account with investments, basically. And then we could just transfer those directly into that. I work at Edward Jones. If it's outside of Edward Jones, really then the firm that would be holding the account for the nonprofit, they would initiate that transfer. And so, you just have to sort of, it's a lot of, just sort of happening in the background. But I think that then the nonprofit, once they receive that asset, then they can decide what they want to do with it. Are they in a position to, is it make more sense for them to sell it? Are there dividends? Do they want to just let those grow? Are they, and if they grow them and sell them later, is that more beneficial to them? And again, that's going to depend on the financial security of that nonprofit. And, what are their current needs and what are their future needs? And so then they have to sort of strategize about, as they do with any gift they get, whether it's stock. I think one of the things too that people get sort of confused about sometimes is they think, oh, it's invested, we can't use it. Well, it only takes 2 days for a stock to settle. So if you sell it on Monday, it settles on Wednesday. And if you have electronic transfer set up, we can have it in someone's checking account on Thursday. And so that money is very liquid for nonprofits if they do need it. But again, they just need to be working with their board and their CPA as well to make sure that they're timing it right so it's most beneficial to them. Does that help?
Yes, that's great. Thanks.
Okay. Another way that an individual can be gifting is for a donor advised fund. Now, this is going to be a little bit more complicated, and this is not something that is probably as common. So this is really for people that need to decrease their estate or their current income taxes in 1 calendar year. And again, this is something we're going to be working really closely with a CPA on. So this is going to be someone who needs to take a large deduction in 1 calendar year. And then they also want to be able to direct how those assets are invested and when and whom they are distributed. This is also for people that do not need current income. So what happens, there's 3 steps. There's the give, the invest, and the grant. So the first step is the giving. So the client is going to make an irrevocable contribution of cash, securities, or collectibles into a donor advised fund. Now this is irrevocable. And so if I am giving this gift to this donor advised fund, I have given up all rights to this money. And so this is somebody that has to really be sure that they don't want this money anymore. And then the account is set up in the name of the sponsoring organization, which owns and administers the assets. The donor might associate a name with the fund. So I could say, like, for me, I could say it's the Gon Family Charitable Account, or, you could name it kind of whatever you want. And then this is how it's going to be. The gifts will be relayed then to different charities. This name is not a part of the account registration. It's just, this is what, the charities are going to see. It's really important to understand that these are irrevocable. There's going to be administrative fees for, having this donor advised fund, and this is separate from any commissions that are on there. So this, depending, there can be a cost associated with this, definitely. The second step is investing. So let's say, for example, I put $1 million into the Gon Family Charitable Account. This is my donor advised fund. I put $1 million in 2020. Then that money is sitting there in this donor advised fund and it's getting invested. So this investment is growing tax-free. So if my $1 million grows to 2 million, there's not going to be any tax implications for me on that additional million. What this can do, and the benefit, is that I can then provide larger grants out of this bucket of money. Now, the third step is the granting, okay? So the tax deduction that I'm going to get is going to happen in 2020, because that's when I personally put the money into the Gon Family Donor Advised Fund. But then I can grant this whenever I want. It doesn't have to be in 2020. And so the deduction that I get from a tax perspective is in 2020, but the granting can occur basically whenever. And so there's going to be, more work involved in this, just because you are granting this to different times. I mean, there's a lot of benefits to this, as far as being able to, give to different organizations. Maybe that money can go farther. You get that tax deduction in that specific year. And so it's really, but again, you have to be working with, you're going to want to work with an advisor. You're going to want to work with a CPA. You want to work with an estate planning attorney to make sure that this is all set up in the way that it needs to. Particularly, and again, communication is key, because if something were to happen and I have this donor advised fund, I pass away, what's going to happen with this? Who's going to be running it? So it's important to, and this is not a foundation. It's a fund. And so that's, again, it's important to be communicating the goals and the wishes for that. Any questions about that, Jennifer?
I'm not seeing any at this
Great.
time.
Okay, so let's move on to talking about qualified charitable distributions. So all of us are probably putting money into tax deferred accounts, like a 401k, tax deferred, 403b, 457, traditional IRAs. Those are all of these kind of accounts that we're not getting taxed on while we're under the age of, well, we used to be 70 and a half, now it's age 72. But what happens is that you reach this age and the government says, hey, we want to start getting our money and we want to get the taxes on this. And so they start making you take required minimum distributions. Well, not everybody needs to be taking these, and they've just raised the age from 70 and a half to 72 to start taking these. And this is a really, really important conversation to be having with people, particularly people that do not need to take their required minimum distribution. And what happens is, if you take this minimum distribution, and this can be tens of thousands of dollars for people, depending on how much money they have in these accounts, then they get taxed on that, on their taxes for that current year. Well, this is a great conversation to be having with people and saying, hey, would you rather directly donate this money from your IRA to a charity, and then you don't have the income taxes on it because it's passing directly to that? But again, this is going to, involve that communication. So who does this work for? This is for someone who's not really going to be itemizing their deductions and they're charitably inclined. That's just your average investor. And I think that this is a great place where we're talking about, I think there's so many people that are, just middle-class investors, and they really do want to be charitably inclined. And I see a lot of my clients, they don't have to be super high net worth to be doing this. And it's a great way for them to be saving on taxes in the current calendar year and fulfilling their charitable goals. A high income investor that has not that really doesn't need that required minimum distribution. They want to give a larger donation. And most of those retirement funds are tied up in retirement plans. You know, I really work with people to try to reduce, you know, to diversify the types of accounts that they have. But, you know, the reality is if someone's been working their whole life and they've been a high wage earner, they're probably trying to save on taxes throughout their life. And a lot of their money is going to be tax deferred. And so it's important to be having those conversations. So a qualified charitable distribution is a great way to be donating and saving on taxes. So what this is doing is allowing certain IRA holders to withdraw up to $100,000 annually from their traditional or Roth IRA and deliver the funds directly to a qualified charitable organization. This results in a tax-free distribution that could also satisfy a client's required minimum distribution. And again, that's going to depend on how much their distribution is. The IRA holder must have already attained the age of 70 and a half for this to work. It does not have to be 72. That's the new, you know, age for required minimum distributions. This is specifically for qualified charitable distributions. And you can also do this on an inherited IRA if the beneficiary owner is over the age of 70 and a half as well. The really key part of this is that it has to be paid directly from the IRA to the qualified charity. You cannot put this into a donor advised fund, and you can't, so this really has to just go. So for example, we do this for our clients and we have these conversations, and my assistant basically knows, okay, so for example, I have some people that they give to their church every year, and the church's annual giving is from July to July. And so we have worked out between their RMDs and when they have committed to the church. So I already know in January, we're going to be sending money directly from their Edward Jones account to the church in their name, and the church is expecting it. And so we'll be sending that on their behalf. But if we were to send them the money and then they donate it to the church, what happens is now that money has been taxed, and now they have less money to give to the church, and they've increased their tax burden. So when you talk about, you know, women not wanting to run out of money and be charitable, well, now they have to pay less money in taxes and they get to fulfill that charitable donation. Now, let's say, for example, someone has a required minimum distribution of $20,000 and they want to live off of part of that. Well, that's great. They can take part of it personally and pay the taxes on what they're taking. And then we can also send a check to the charity for whatever amount that they want to give in that calendar year. And I certainly have no problem having our office send out checks to multiple organizations from one account. You know, that's what we're here for, is to help our clients reach their goals. And just because it's a little extra administrative on our side, that's not a problem. But the key here is it has to come directly from the IRA and be sent to it cannot go to the person and then go to the charity. So that's a really good thing. I think communicating this early to people before they hit the age of 70 and a half, really understanding what their goals are. This is a really, really important thing to be talking to people about. Now the next thing I want to talk about is insurance. So insurance can give peace of mind. There's different purposes for insurance. When we talk about needing insurance later in life, these are conversations that I really like to start with people when they're around 50. Insurance is one of those things that you get a better rate when you're younger and healthier. And so the earlier you can be having these conversations, the more important it is. That's not to say you can't get insurance later in life. I did actually sell a permanent insurance policy to an 82-year-old client. She missed the cutoff, or she was about to get to that cutoff. She was super, super healthy. And the reason we did that, and the way that this can, we talked about her goals, and she said she had a really a huge cost basis on this investment. It was in a B trust. When it passed to her kids, it was just going to be an absolute mess. They were going to just end up losing most of it to taxes. And so she said, I really want my kids to get more money. and I don't want them to have to pay taxes. It's so important for me to be able to do this. And so what we were able to do is sell her the investment she had. There was a lot of taxes due on it, but she personally knew that, and she wanted to incur that. Her kids were involved in the conversation, and we bought this life insurance policy. So she was able to get $100,000 more for her kids, and now they get that tax-free. And that's a huge benefit to pass that on. Now, this is also something where if someone wants to leverage their resources to have a higher death benefit. So permanent life insurance policies are more expensive than just a term policy. And most, people that are reaching later in life, they're not going to be buying a term policy. There's really not a huge point in that. But the permanent policies, you can be paying premiums or pay a lump sum, and sort of, I talk about it in you're repositioning your assets. And so taking assets you're possibly not going to need, or that you're trying to leverage, where you're saying, I'm willing to put this money in here to have a greater death benefit that's going to be tax-free. So this can be good for just your heirs, but you can also leverage that money. If it's a really important charitable goal, let's get a permanent policy, and a nonprofit can be the beneficiary. Depending, that's probably not the best scenario. We're going to kind of go through a couple of different scenarios. When we talk about women and their concern about healthcare costs and longevity, some people do have long-term care insurance. Standalone long-term care insurance is kind of going by the wayside because the rates are just going up. When you typically go on claim in your early 80s, sometimes people have already dropped their policies because it just feels like it's too expensive. If you don't use it, you're going to lose the money anyways. So it's not the best policy. So sometimes where the industry is really headed is a permanent insurance policy with a chronic illness rider. And so this can be beneficial because it's satisfying a number of needs where people are going to have money for those long-term care costs. If they don't use it, there still is a death benefit. And so they're just repositioning those assets. And while this is not a conversation about long-term care, I think that needs to enter the conversation because women are concerned about these issues. But when we talk about really leveraging life insurance from a gifting strategy, this has become more important since 2019. So in December of 2019, the Secure Act went into effect. And basically where this has implications is the Secure Act eliminated stretch IRAs for non-spouse beneficiaries. And basically what a stretch IRA was it allowed the beneficiaries to stretch their required minimum distributions for that inherited IRA over their lifetime. So a lot of times this was a really good strategy where people said, okay, I have, $500,000 in my traditional IRA. I'm going to leave this to my kids, and my kids now can stretch. They don't have to take it all. The options were, you could take it all as a lump sum and get taxed on it. You could take it over 5 years, or you could stretch it out for your lifetime. Well, if you stretch it out over the lifetime, then you are required to take less every year, which means the money can grow and you have a lower tax burden every year. Well, now that has been eliminated. And this was a strategy people were using to be able to gift additional money. So now the new regulations after the Secure Act is that if I inherit an IRA from my parents, for example, I have to fully take all of the money out of that traditional IRA within 10 years, as long as that person has died after January 1st, 2020. And so this could really be an issue if someone passes away, they leave this IRA to their children. And what if their kids are still working and they're high wage earners? They're in a really high tax bracket. And now they have to take out all this money out of mom or dad's IRA within 10 years. And so this becomes not necessarily this lovely gift that the parents wanted, because most of it's getting eaten up by taxes over the 10 years. And so again, we have to be communicating communicating this and talking. And so having this conversation with the parents, if they are intending to leave it to the children, and saying, you know, where do you have high wage earning kids? Have you talked to them about the tax implications about this? And so really trying to reposition those things. Now, this is where life insurance can come in with this. So let's say, for example, mom and dad dad's passed away, mom's still living. She has $1 million in this traditional IRA. The kids are higher net worth, and she is concerned about passing this entire amount to the kids and the tax burden that it could leave. But she still wants the kids to get something. And so this is where we can use insurance. And so are we in a position to reposition some assets, buy a permanent life insurance policy on mom that maybe has $1 million value? Some of the required minimum distributions can be used to pay for the policy. The children become the beneficiary of the policy. Life insurance transfers tax-free. So that's a benefit to the children. And then mom can put nonprofit charitable organizations as the beneficiary on the traditional IRA. And then all of those nonprofits get that money tax-free as well. And so this is such a huge way to leverage life insurance to be able to give gifts to the kids, but also gift to charity. And I mean, it's a wonderful way to do that. Now, of course, someone has to be healthy in order to do this. And so the sooner that you can be having these conversations with people, the better. I think that, there are still options for people. If this really is so important to them, maybe they would be willing to pay a higher premium if they don't have to pay taxes. So, but you have to communicate that, and you have to let people know that these are options, because the Secure Act is really throwing a wrench in the plans of what some people had. And I think that, people don't realize the stretch IRA was not around for very long. I think this was put into place like in the early 2000s, I think. So it hasn't always been an option. But again, this just highlights the importance of communication when laws change, when tax codes change. We have to be ready to have these conversations with people so that they're really benefiting and that the nonprofits can benefit as well. So there's a lot of different ways. Again, these are not going to work for everybody. They're not going to work every single year. And some people are going to be able to use many of these strategies, and some will only use one. And so we just have to be aware of what's out there. We have to make our clients aware of their options, and we have to repeat those things because they're not always going to hear them, particularly if it's not applicable at the time we're talking to them about it. And so I think it's just really important to be communicating this. And I think it's also very important to be listening to really what the concerns are. Is it taxes? Is it the charitable giving component? Is it a longevity? What are their feelings about the money? And giving them and creating the space where they can speak freely and openly to us about the goals that they have. And then we can, work with them to make those goals a reality. I do not have anything else. And so if there's any questions, I'm happy to take questions. Or Noelle, if you have things to add, please feel free to jump in.
Thank you, Cherie. I actually just got a quick question pop in about what the estate planning side of the solution is for that Secure Act issue. So thank you so much for setting that up and explaining it from the financial side, but absolutely. It's not clean though. It's not as clean as it is for the different examples that Cherie provided. So one thing that we're seeing, and I hope I'm not getting too much into the weeds here, so please somebody stop me if I am, but what we're seeing sometimes is, especially if there's higher net worth, maybe we're concerned about potentially an estate tax issue. Maybe not now, but maybe down the road. See this often with families around that $3 million range and up, because that very quickly could become an estate tax issue, that type of family. Where we will essentially set up a trust for the family that has a couple different components, where maybe, let's say, has 2 kids. So mom and dad have 2 kids, and they want to benefit the kids and they want to benefit some charities. We could split up a the trust between one that the children might have access to for day to day, a revocable trust for the children's benefit. But then maybe there's another one that's more of a legacy trust component where, and what I mean by legacy is when I'm talking with my clients, it's an open box or a closed box. So open box, the kids have access that they can take certain amounts out or for certain reasons or at certain ages. The closed box, that's going to be tucked away essentially for the descendants or for the charity or however you want to do this forever. Because in Wisconsin and certain other states, trusts don't have an expiration date. So a very famous example of doing something along these lines is Benjamin Franklin. What he did is he had a certain component to care for his family in his trust. Everything else got locked away in this legacy trust. And he had it that it had to reinvest for 100 years. Of course, since there's no stretch IRA and that doesn't go towards trusts either, they don't have that lifetime. So the trust would have its own tax rate. So that might be higher or lower than maybe the children's at that time. Like I said, and like Cherie said, these numbers do change from time to time with the tax codes. But essentially, if you have this trust, lock it away, allow it to reinvest, allow it to grow, but no individual necessarily has access to take it out, or maybe only just the income or something like that. It's very customizable, but it can grow and essentially create its own foundation. So there are still students today going to school on the assets produced in Benjamin Franklin's Legacy Trust Fund, that you can essentially create your own mini charity, or if he chose not to have it to a specific scholarship, he could have had it go to a different charity. So, or different charitable causes. You can set it up in so many different ways where it doesn't even have to just grow over your lifetime. It could grow over your great grandkids' lifetime if we set things up and we're working with your financial advisor, your kids' financial advisors, etc. down the line. So that's why if you're really wanting to create that massive gift, maybe even generations from now, you need to get the whole family and the whole team involved today, or else many things could mess it up along the way. So communication is so key for just the day-to-day passing from parents to children, but even more so if we want to create a big lasting legacy. And you don't have to have a minimum amount to do that. Anybody can start something like that.
Noelle, you make a great point. I think, the life insurance example that I gave at the end where I talked about, purchasing a life insurance policy that's going to go to the kids, and then the tax deferred, say traditional IRA would go to a charitable organization. It's really important, if parents are comfortable, to be letting their kids know that's what the plan is, and that the expectation is there, and this is why they're doing it, and it is for the benefit and what their goals are, because it can really create a lot of animosity at death. And people that are already making these decisions, I don't really think that's their goal. And so if you can be communicating with your children or grandchildren about what is happening with this money and why you're buying the life insurance policy and why they're the beneficiary of that versus the tax deferred assets, that's going to be better for everyone involved.
This is Jennifer, and I have a question for both Noelle and Cherie. Cherie, you've talked a lot about quarterbacking and good communication with all parties, and we definitely work together as a team. From the nonprofit perspective, how do you all, what is kind of the best approach for working with the nonprofits? How can we be the best partners for your work with your clients on these conversations?
Well, I think, if you're on this call and you're educating yourself, that's the first step. I think that, You know, qualified charitable distributions are a great avenue and something that you should be including in presentations that you're giving to people as a giving option, because it's amazing how many people don't know that they can actually do this. If you are willing to accept stock or real estate or collectibles or whatever, let people know that. And I think most nonprofits are very good about letting, you know, giving people like, this is what our legal name is, this is our tax ID number. But it's really important that these, if I'm leaving money to a nonprofit, I need to make sure that it's named correctly, so it's not causing a huge headache for my estate and for the nonprofit who's hoping to get this money. And there's a lot of nonprofits, a lot of them have very similar names. And so really working with people to let them know very clearly that this is what we are called legally, and this is how we need to be named. And don't be afraid to say that.
And I want to second that as well, that the naming, making it easily accessible, easily available, letting your network know what exactly the name is, and making it clear and easy. So if we're going to reach out to you, what exactly it is. Also, I've seen that some organizations, I'll say my church, for example, has specific funds for specific reasons that you can leave in your planned gifting plan. So maybe for the, there's a school attached. So specifically, this is the legal name, the legal ID for if you're giving specifically for the school expansion versus just general church functions or grounds, those sorts of things. So I've seen some people have just a general fund where you can just name towards that. Or maybe if your organization has different segments, making it very clear what is each legal name so that there's no confusion, and our clients would be resting assured that exactly their intention is being carried out.
Thank you. Let's see, so we have about 8 minutes before we wrap up. I want to open it now officially to the Q&A section. I've got my eye on the chat, and as we're waiting for any additional questions to come in, I was thinking back to a conversation I had with one of our wonderful donors, and you know, she called me as the development professional and asked me a very tax related question, and I said, you know, I can't advise on that, you know, please ask your advisor. And she didn't want to spend her money for the advisor. So I would love to have, you know, your perspective. I mean, we did talk about it and she ended up talking with the appropriate individual, but just from, you know, your experiences, what can we say to those donors who, you know, want to just be very frugal and not spend money if they don't have to, but it could really cause problems in the long run?
Well, I can't speak for other financial advisor firms. There are different ways people get paid, but I only get paid on investments. I'm super happy I don't have billable hours anymore. And so if someone is going to call me and have questions, that is, they're not going to get a bill for that. And so, you know, I'm always happy to provide, you know, just resources to people or have a conversation. I'm not going to, if someone's not a client, I'm not going to give them a bunch of advice if I don't really understand their situation. That would be, you know, really unethical, but I am happy to have those conversations. So feel free to use me as a resource. I think that, you know, part of, you know, my quarterback role that I talked about is because I'm not going to be paid by the hour, can also sort of distill things down. And when I'm working with CPAs and attorneys, I really try to understand the totality of the situation before I shoot off an email or schedule a phone call, so that we're not wasting a lot of time and that I'm not racking up those bills for my clients, because I do understand that. I'm cognizant of that. And so I try to not have a lot of back and forth. It's let's address this all at once, so it's not, you know, 15 or 20 emails.
And similarly with mine is my practice as well. I only charge a flat fee for work that's completed. So sitting down, having a discussion, learning different options, that education piece, I think is so important. And that's, I know for attorneys, that's a huge threshold for a lot of people, that no one wants to talk to an attorney because they're afraid if they ask one question, they're going to get a large bill. And I just don't think that that's appropriate when this is such an incredibly personal area and so important for you to know what options are available. So I personally never charge for consultations or asking questions, just completed documents. But another thing I do want to point out is that I'll be honest, my thesis in grad school was essentially the economics of do-it-yourself legal services. And unfortunately, a lot of attorneys make a lot of money on clients who at one point did a do-it-yourself legal document, because a lot of times they're not legal in the state you work for, or the state that you live in or work for, depending on how you have things set up. They might not be upholding in court, so that's, even if you had a trust that was do-it-yourself, it might end up in probate anyway. And especially those hourly attorneys, they typically make more money on clients that they have to undo an old estate plan and redo a new one if things were titled to that trust. So it's great if you can find a good resource that isn't going to charge for quick questions like that. But it's also really important that trying to cut corners doesn't always save you in the end.
Thank you. Those are some really great perspectives. Well, I see that I think you might have answered a lot of questions. There aren't any at this point in time. So I am not shy about wrapping up meetings early if that's necessary. I know there's lots of stuff going on this week for everybody. If anybody has any questions, please let us know at WACGP. You can also reach out to Cherie or Noelle if they clearly welcome connection and contact and are great resources, of course. And so I'm seeing the thanks come in. So we really appreciate both of you taking the time to dive into these topics and help all of us with these amazing donors and clients